So, hi everybody, welcome to our panel. As John mentioned, my name is Rio and I work for Clio and I'm the Affinity Programs Coordinator. And I have with me three incredibly talented and expertise-filled people. Sorry, they're great. Anyway, we've got Colin, Amy, and Aileen, and I'm going to give you a brief intro on each of them, and then we will get our panel started. So Colin is the CEO at VLEX Canada, and they are also the qualified supplier of AI services for the Government of Canada. And he's also been named one of Canada's 25 most influential lawyers by Canadian Lawyer Magazine, and he also at one point, and I think everybody knows this, was the CEO of CanLII from 2011 to 2015. So welcome, Colin. And next we have Amy Johar, and she is a global blockchain consultant. She was actually the founder of Global Blockchain Consultants, right? Yes. And she's also on the board of Blockchain Canada and produces a podcast called Strictly Legal, which is pretty fantastic, I have to say. And she's also pursuing a doctorate at Western University. So welcome, Amy. And finally, we have Aileen Schultz. And Aileen is an award-winning business strategist, yeah. And she's got a background in research, marketing, and digital strategy. And you are the founder of World Legal Summit, right? And the co-founder of Global Legal Hackathon. And both of those are initiatives that seek to bring legal and technology sectors together to help foster legal transformation. So yay, let's give a round of applause to all of our panelists. All right, now, as you know, we're going to be talking about the practice of law and the future of tech, but what I really want to start off with is asking you guys, after we leave this room, what are some things that you want to know? What are some questions you want to know about the legal technological landscape, the future, where things are going, how we can adjust to it? Shout them out. What are the things you guys want to know? Come on, someone's got to want to know something.
Even just saying blockchain is
okay.
One word answers all the buzzwords, whatever it is that is plaguing you.
Cloud storage and security.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, fabulous. And I should mention our panelists are going to try to incorporate answers to these questions into their answers. So, anything else?
Ransom hacking.
Ransom hacking? Okay.
Blockchain technology for dummies.
Yeah, you and me both. Fabulous. Anyone else?
Dealing with the pace that things seem to be moving now, everything seems to be moving so fast. It's very hard to act. I was reading an article on this. It's getting harder and harder to practice confidence.
Yeah.
Because things are everything. Real estate deals come in like 2 days before a mortgage come in 2 days before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's getting very stressful.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so dealing with the pace that things are moving, and that's absolutely something that a lot of people, I'm sure, want to know more about. Great. Oh, one more?
Managing the volume of information out there.
Okay.
Case law, thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Okay, so managing volume of case law. Fabulous. Okay. Oh, one last one.
How do you regulate AI providing legal services?
That's a great one. We're going to talk about that. So fabulous. Okay, you guys think that's some good materials there? Mm-hmm. Okay, fabulous. So why don't we get started then? So let's talk about, I want to start talking about kind of, all of you have very different areas of expertise, different areas of the legal tech world that you work in. I'd like to start with each of you kind of giving a brief overview of the areas that you work in and kind of the aspect of legal tech that you find the most fascinating and promising for the future. So why don't we start with Colin?
Okay, thank you, Rio. So as mentioned, I work in legal information. So legal information we broadly understand as things like cases, statutes, regulations, but it's also a little bit more than that. It's things like your work product. It's things like your research memos. It's stuff like that. So what interests me in the area that I've spent most of my time in the past 8 years are the tools, behaviors, practices, and so on that allow people to manage that flow of information to more efficiently get at the insights and answers and information they need.
Great, thank you. Amy?
Thanks, Rio. Such a pleasure to be here. I sit at really the intersection of business, law, and tech. So looking specifically at enterprise use cases that can be implemented within, particular in this context, law. And my area of passion at the moment is distributed ledger tech, because I think that opens a whole new world of possibility for, if you will, smart contracts and smart intelligent contracts and legal agreements. And we'll get into that more as we move forward, but sort of that it's really sitting at that intersection and connecting people, projects, and possibilities is something that I'm deeply passionate about, and developing and fostering that community within Toronto and across Canada.
Fabulous. Thank you, Amy. Aileen?
So I'm fairly abstract, and I will start out by saying, full disclosure, I don't actually come from a legal background, so I come from the tech side of the equation, and I'd also like to say I come in peace, here to help with the transition, yeah, so I do, I think the best umbrella to put me under is probably global systems, and so I like to focus on how to facilitate change in global systems, creating global communities, environments for collaboration that brings together stakeholders, the skill sets necessary to affect change in a specific area. And so most recently that is with the World Legal Summit, which is focused on bringing better regulation and legislative structures to emerging technologies in two parts: first information and then actionable change. Not impossible, I believe. Yeah, so that's a bit about me.
Fabulous. Thanks, guys. So, Amy, now a second ago you said that you're really interested in distributed legal ledgers, right? Now, what does that mean?
I think we have to back up first.
We have to back up first, okay.
To answer the third question from the audience, sort of blockchain tech for dummies.
There we go. Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Shall we start with that?
Yes.
And then we'll get into distributed ledgers and what that means for legal tech. And I think, how many here have an understanding of blockchain, other than Mona and Colin? Okay, so we're going to start very basic level. Imagine, who knows the game Connect 4? Yeah, okay. So imagine Connect 4, or think of a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, and then think of the game Connect 4. And imagine that we have a game, and there's 1,000 players playing the game, and every player can see that board. And every player has a chance to play their own piece during their turn, and imagine that little piece being a set of data. And so every time you play your chip or you play your piece of data, that's like, imagine a block being connected to a chain. So think of it as, that being your blockchain. And everybody who's playing the game can see that piece that's been played, they can see the board, and there's complete transparency around what's happening. So you can see it all at the same time. And what that means is that when you're talking about a peer-to-peer system, which is exactly what a distributed ledger is, it encompasses a peer-to-peer network. And imagine each player playing a unique role in that network of peers, and each little piece and each little player being their own node. And so what that enables is that each player is really their own server. So if you have every player acting as their own server, there's no need for a centralized server. There's no need for a referee in the game, if you will. Because what happens in this peer-to-peer distributed network is that every action that one player takes impacts the rest of the players. And we have complete transparency because you can all see the board, what's happening in real time. So there's really three main pieces to blockchain that you should sort of categorize and think about it with those three pieces in mind. One is this peer-to-peer network, which is what I'm describing with, all the players in the room, adding their pieces of data and being able to see what's happening in real time. And the other is this distributed idea, so that everybody all at once is forming the network, and every action impacts the rest of the players. So that's peer-to-peer, distributed, and then the third important piece is that it's verifiable, that it's unalterable. So because you can see what's happening, it's very difficult for me to go in and remove a piece from my Connect 4 game. So think that's sort of one way of thinking about it. In essence, what it is distributed ledger tech that enables, people to easily verify that information has not been tampered with. It does this using fancy math like Merkle trees, hash functions, basically cryptography to ensure the security of the system in a distributed way. The benefit of what this means is that you don't have this central point of failure that you do if you're relying on that referee or that one server to designate the true state of events. So, when you reconcile your bank statements at the end of every month, you're always reconciling as against, the bank's version of events. And so, imagine the bank being this centralized server, the arbiter of truth. You're always reconciling against their ledger. So what blockchain enables is for everybody to have the same copy of the ledger, to see that board in that real time, and to easily verify that information hasn't been changed or altered. Or think about like a checksum. When you write a checksum, you come up, there's all kinds of different checks, and if you come up with a certain sum, and if 1 cent changes, that you're out of balance. The same thing with a blockchain. It easily allows you to verify the information hasn't been tampered with. And we can get into more of that, but I don't want to. In a nutshell, that's it. So when it's applied to law, that enables any asset of value. Typically, you think of it, just really quickly to help you understand how it applies to laws. When you think of blockchains, typically that's in this, and a lot of people think of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and that's a really great use case because it's a digital representation of value. You've got this, digital fingerprint to be able to keep track of sums and to ensure that the same $5 hasn't been spent twice. But the same thing can apply in law when any asset of value that has uniqueness can be transacted on a ledger really well. And when you think within the legal industry, that could most directly apply to your information. So your greatest asset is the information that you hold, your precedents, your client matters, and each of those can have a digital fingerprint, can be secured in a cryptographic way to ensure that the information hasn't been tampered with, and to secure it in a way that's not exposing it in a central point of failure. In a nutshell, that's it. And we can get more into that. But yeah, that's blockchain for law.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I definitely have a better understanding of blockchain. Absolutely. And I know that blockchain is something that, although it was invented in the 90s, I believe, it hasn't actually come into use until about 2009, right, with the invention of Bitcoin. So it's a relatively recent kind of entry into the tech industry. But I'm kind of wondering, actually, Colin, so in addition to like blockchain, are there any other kinds of like technologies that you've seen emerge in the legal tech industry in the last 5 to 10 years?
Sure. So when we think about legal tech, we think about the buzzwords. And Amy's gone through blockchain. The other buzzword we hear a lot about is AI. Mm-hmm. So to demystify AI, like blockchain, it's math. It's pattern matching, it's statistics, and so on. And so what we've seen happen a lot more effectively in legal information over the past 10 years is an advancement on a couple fronts about how effective that math, the statistics, can be used to specific use applications with legal information. So one of my favorite examples when I give a demonstration of this is I think of the way we were trained to research legal information. We were trained to start with a reference source and look for elements within that reference source that lead us to another authoritative source. So primary example of that is case A mentions case B. So if we want to understand more about case A, we go read case B. But what if case A mentions case 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, goes on for about, a couple hundred. Let's call it a big land claim case that went through the Supreme Court. Are we going to research all of them to understand it? No. So one thing that AI has done well And again, we'll call it AI, but as other people have said, it's only called AI until it becomes software. It becomes something that is just the norm. So we've been able to use for a long time tools that just let us say, well, case A cited 1,000 cases, but within these 1,000 cases, case number 75 has been cited the most. So that's where I'm going to go first. So we look for clues. So what AI has been able to do is accelerate traditional research methods. But it's also been able to extend traditional research methods. So another example that we look for is topic. So if case A was a family law case, and conversation I was having before was about imputed income. So if we know case A was about imputed income, our approach before would be to go to the Canadian abridgment or something like that, or some source, and say what other cases have dealt with that particular topic, whether or not they've been referenced. So again, AI is getting quite good at pulling out an understanding of topics of cases and carrying out that research for you. So this is, we have been experiencing a gradual improvement of that kind of functionality, and we're definitely at the upswing of the hockey stick right now for how much faster and farther we can go in applying this kind of review, because it doesn't have to be solely about citations and subject matter. It could be about citations and subject matter and parties, citations and subject matters and parties and jurisdiction, and on and on and on. All of these little sub-factors creates not 10 ways to look for something or 100 ways, but an exponential growth in the number of ways that we can do it. But computing power combined with these statistical models allow us to move very quickly to things that are likely close. It's not picking up? Oh, pardon me. Yeah, these tools are allowing us to move very, very quickly to a subset of relevant answers. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to go into the regulate AI question that was raised. So if this is doing the kind of work that a lawyer has traditionally done, is this tool now practicing law? Or is it just accelerating your ability to find information? And for the most part, I think we've got some comfort level that this is just an acceleration up until the point when we begin making decisions based on it and not using it as a research tool, but using it as a decision-making tool. And so this is where it begins to get really interesting, both from the perspective of legal regulation, but also from the perspective of ethics. Are we turning an accelerated research tool into an automated decision-making tool? And so I'm going to stop there because now I've sort of done discussing history and I'm into what's coming next. So we'll save that.
Thank you, Colin. So Aileen, actually, I wanted to ask you, so you do a lot of global, what is the word I'm looking for? Outreach?
Projects?
Yes, projects, exactly. Initiatives, exactly. So you're really kind of up to date and familiar with new trends in emerging markets kind of around the world. Do you notice a use of AI and blockchain in any other sectors around the world, any other legal tech sectors?
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly a pervasive thing across the globe. But something that I've noticed in particular, and that I'd love to touch on, is the emergence of new forms of the business and practice of law that are unexpected. So things like, for example, I mean, most people in this room have probably heard about the infiltration of the Big Four. I would imagine most people are aware of this. So something, I was speaking to a fellow from Russia, actually, recently, and he was telling me about how in Russia, there's a telecommunications company, so telecommunications, whose legal department, they were trying to get them on board with automating, so implementing various, I'm sure artificial intelligence and other technologies played a role in this, but they were coming against, surprise, surprise, a lot of pushback. Because the lawyers in the department were concerned about their jobs disappearing. And so what they did was they made them a contractual promise that they would find other jobs for them once they switched over the whole department to these automated technologies. And so they all said, okay, all right, sure, we'll come on board for this. And what ended up happening then is that, yes, their jobs effectively disappeared, and the telecommunications company then began outsourcing their lawyers and practicing law. So you're seeing a telecommunications company now becoming a service provider for legal services. And so these kinds of changes are happening globally, yes. And the other thing too is that this is actually also, I would say, opening up more opportunities for lawyers in unexpected places. So yes, there is this daunting, scary side of the puzzle, but there's also opportunity. So in particular, when it comes to innovation and technology moving forward, what a lot of people think or hear often from the Googles and the Facebooks of the world is that like down with the law, don't regulate us because we want to continue to conquer the world in the 7 seas. But what ends up happening then is that we have these real-world systems that don't have the legal or regulatory structures for these technologies to operate and to be adopted and to evolve. And this is a place where I firmly believe, and I think it kind of just goes without saying, that legal professionals should be at the front row. Legal professionals, people who have spent their careers studying these systems and practicing these frameworks, are the ones who should be there facilitating these, effectively the evolution of the law and what it means to build iterative law that can match the pace and change of technology. So,
Can I pick up on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple things that Aileen's talking about there are, you see the ability to do something that looks like practicing law being handled by people who aren't traditionally lawyers or legally trained. But at the same time, you see an acceleration of the creation of technology that's being brought back into the legal community in ways that are both scary and create amazing opportunities. So just before we came up, Monadat was talking about Loom Analytics. And so this is something that is an example of 5 years ago, this would have been incredibly expensive to pull together. But it's being moved quickly because Mona's able to rely on technologies and people and systems that are moving at a rapid pace globally and create something that can be packaged and used locally. So we have this fantastic sort of two-way set of activities that's happening. One is it's getting easier for other people to do things that we call practicing law, but it's also getting easier for us to practice law based on what we adopt from other industries. And so it's having that ability to package and create it and simplify it, sort of abstract away the fancy tech and turn it into something that really becomes workflow, becomes a question of how do I move from step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down that sequence. The lawyer, based on their experience and their knowledge of unique practice areas, the jurisdictions that they operate in, the way things are done, that knowledge can now benefit from acceleration, tech-based acceleration at various points. And so, yeah, it's kind of exciting. But the global has that really positive impact that's coming back to us.
So it is definitely exciting. And I think this gentleman over here mentioned that it's also kind of intimidating and a little bit overwhelming at times. So what are some ways that, Amy, that you think that like smaller firms and say the small and solo practitioners can start using these incredible tools and adopting them in a way that is sensible and
Yeah, there's such an appetite, right? Everybody wants to know and everybody wants to implement, but there's no getting around the fact that there's this delta of an information gap. And the simplest way of overcoming that is to educate oneself. And that can be formalized programs, and that can also be just your own self-research. Any one of us just will be more than happy to share any resources that are publicly available with any of you that express an interest. But I would say like the best starting point, and I'm sure Aileen and Colin have some great insights as well, but is to really educate yourself about how to implement these different types of technology in a way that maintains your competency. Because in one of the questions that was raised was, well, how do we maintain our competency in tech. And I think the right way of looking at it is that how do I leverage technology to ensure my own competency? And I think that's a live issue within the profession. Colin, you probably, I know you have thoughts on this as well.
I have thoughts, plus I have the benefit of the thoughts of all the bencher candidates who ran. That in that LSO Bencher website that I created, I had the questions around seeking opinions on regulation of AI or AI in service delivery, but also questions around technology competency. And if I can attempt to distill a lot of the information and a lot of the discussion that came out of it, it's not about knowing how to design your own distributed ledger. It's not about necessarily knowing how to map or create, but it's about creating that understanding of where certain parts of your practice can be enhanced by adoption of technology, and where adopting technology would just accelerate the mistake, which just cause you to move faster in a bad direction. So the competency, underlying tech competency, is not really in the specific. It's more in the component of saying, where are the inefficiencies? Where's there repeated activity? Where am I constantly going to the well for the same batch of information? Where am I losing time? So appreciating that there's an increasing range of answers to those questions, and there's an increasing range of resources where you can educate yourself on that. That's what I would say, we need to move towards in terms of a tech competency. And we have the benefit of looking into the US, for example, where 37 states in one form or another have adopted some form of a duty of tech competency, but it really amounts to understanding where tech can play a role. So you're going to see an increasing amount of guidance, both through US state bars as well as Canadian law societies on these questions. And I think with it are going to come things like resources that you can look to.
And I think, Aileen's going to have a really great perspective on the speed and adoption of tech in law across the world. Maybe you can just give us an understanding of an insight into the pervasive nature of the rapid acceleration of technology and how it's being applied in any industry, but law, it is just leapfrogging. And Aileen, maybe you can speak to what you're seeing across the world.
Yeah,
I know you see it all.
Well, not all of it. Yeah, that's a very big question. So thank you for that very, very big question. So one thing I wanted to first highlight the concern that I'm sorry, I don't think you said your name, but yeah. So you brought up the concern about the pace of change and how do you deal with that, right? So to Amy's point. Every industry, and yes, legal, because of it being so behind, is experiencing sort of like a seemingly unique pressure that other industries may not be feeling for adoption, change, and transition. But every industry is feeling this pace of change, so legal's not alone. And in terms of globally, these things are happening globally, and it's. I don't want to make it sound daunting and intimidating, but it's coming. It's coming whether the industry likes it or not. And speaking to what I learned recently about that telecommunications company in Russia in specific, that is indication that although law firms, there's always going to be a need for legal practitioners, right? But the service model is changing everywhere. So the firms and the practitioners that can get ahead of that curve and accept that these technologies are coming will benefit from the other side of that, and it is something that. I'm trying to think of better examples globally to speak to answer Amy's question. But certainly there are jurisdictions, for example, Australia is an incredibly hot pocket for legal innovation. The UK really kicked things off for a lot of these systems as well. Are you looking for like
Yeah, sorry,
specific
I
use
just-
cases
yeah, like-
or?
Sorry, Aileen, I did. It's not my role, but you know so much. But the, like, I think, you know, there's this disintermediation of lower level, not lower level, but like what you were saying, Colin, about these repeatable tasks that can be performed by technology really efficiently. And I think there's always these recurring questions like, are we going to have jobs in 10 years? And the right perspective, I think, is to acknowledge, like, those tasks can be easily done by implementing technology, but there's going to be this insatiable desire for lawyers that have this unique experience, that are competent in tech. And so it's really just sort of to draw out that there's this huge appetite, and it's a market-driven demand for that demand curve. And, you know, on the other side, seeing this limited supply. So the impetus being like, hurry up and learn and get on it, because it's happening. And I mean, what Aileen sees, I mean, you know, global adoption of legal tech in the last like 2 years.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
There was actually, if I could just highlight a quick
Yeah.
example, actually, to better touch on what Amy was talking about. So in the Russian market again, and sorry, this is a recent conversation, so it's fresh of mind that I'm bringing all these Russian examples forward. So in that same transition, they also have an incredibly accelerated legal tech market, which I was incredibly surprised to hear, actually, because I thought it would have been the reverse. I thought it would have been kind of stunted in Eastern European markets. But they have one company in particular that is actually opening the gateway. So their CEO, and forgive me, I didn't actually get the name of the company, but they're a company that basically does almost like telemarketing, but for legal services. And so you can just call in as an individual or as a company and get quick fire answers, and they do monthly and yearly subscriptions. And it's dirt cheap. I think he quoted for businesses, it's like the equivalent to 250 USD a year. To sign up, and you get effectively unlimited legal questions that you can call in. And these are not automated robot, chatbot type, you know, like find a piece of applicable legislation and pump it out. This is humans. This is actually human lawyers answering these problems. And what this company has found is that in that market, there were effectively millions of potential legal issues that previously just hadn't been answered because they were small enough that people just didn't go to law firms. And they thought, oh, okay, well, you know, I'm just going to deal with this or let it roll over, whatever it is. But now, because of this company and the access that they've created, they've actually opened up this almost like a whole new market for legal professionals to jump on board and help these millions of legal issues that don't get addressed. And so in this way, and then to speak to Amy's point again, this is also creating elite services, right? So it's actually taking away the mundane, not so fun aspects of being a legal service provider and creating opportunity in which legal professionals can actually provide more of a human consultancy type service. Which is, I would think, both for the legal professional, but also for the recipients of the legal services, a beautiful thing. So,
And, sorry, that actually raises a really good point about the fact that it's what's been created is you have a tech-enabled service that becomes a service that's delivered downstream to other lawyers and to others. And I think this is part of what we are seeing and what we're going to continue to see, is that whether or not you as a legal professional will examine your practice and say, what can I fix? Someone else, somewhere else is looking at the components of what's involved in your practice. I mean, think about some of the things that you currently outsource right now. You may outsource like process service. You may outsource other filing activities. You certainly outsource your
Bookkeeping?
Bookkeeping, things like that. There's going to be, and we're seeing it right now, an increasing number of these kinds of things that are going to seek to support different aspects of your service. Now, this doesn't lead you to a utopia. This leads you to mass confusion because they're not necessarily going to talk to each other. So I think here's the downside. I think what we're entering is truly a bit of a Wild West thing. There's a guy named David Perla who did he did a presentation about 6 years ago. He called it the Precambrian explosion, saying that the state of legal tech about 6 years ago was people were coming up with a lot of good ideas, and you could start seeing the bubbling and sort of compared it to sort of like the creation of life, like the Precambrian creation of life. Now what we're seeing is these things hitting the market. One of the reasons you feel overwhelmed with the number of products and services that are coming is because it's so easy to create. It's so easy to create something, so difficult for you to evaluate it. So we are definitely in a very rough patch right now for being able to critically evaluate things. And now I'm going to tie it into the question about cloud and security.
So we're running out of a bit of time.
Okay.
We're running a little bit long.
All
But,
right.
so why don't we quickly touch on cloud security?
Sure.
Okay, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how kind of these really small and solo firms
Yep.
can kind of look at their own firms and find out what needs to be changed, and then how they can make use of these technologies to kind of build a better future for
Excellent.
themselves.
So
Yeah.
short words on cloud and security. Everything's moving to the cloud.
Yes, it's so
And
true.
the cloud's getting more secure. I mean, frankly, the insecurity is the USB key in your pocket. It's the standalone server in your office. The direction of cloud and security is improving generally.
So what is it that makes cloud security that much better? Is it?
I mean, it's among the actual security components
Yeah.
of not losing it. There's the fact that a lot of it is standardizing you have Amazon, you have others who are achieving a particular status. You have industrial and institutional users like governments and banks relying heavily on it. So on balance, this isn't really just somebody's computer somewhere else. This is a standard that's been created by the most demanding customers that are being delivered at prices and in packages accessible to everybody. So that's one of the main reasons why it's getting better and better.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So I know that we are running out of time. I think we're actually over our time, but this is like really interesting. So I think that we should go for a couple more minutes. So we talked a lot about like smaller firms and basically contending with this wave of innovation that is coming toward them. And you mentioned how looking at their own practices and finding ways that they can use this technology to improve efficiency and eliminate these kind of mundane tasks that may not even be paying the bills. They're necessary, but they're not paying the bills. So what are some tools that they can use? So let's start with Colin, that they can use to kind of examine, to take a look at their own firms and find out these inefficiencies.
Post-it notes.
Post-it notes?
Post-it notes are the best tool. Just map it out on your wall with Post-it notes, how you move something from A to Z, and you'll discover something.
So
worth
all the
fixing.
steps, basically.
Yeah, you'll discover something worth fixing.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And Amy,
Yeah, like it's similar to what Colin is saying. Maybe do that in the context of, project and process improvement. So project management and process improvement. So like just going through your workflows. Like what are the pain points? And then when you've identified, I mean, it's very simple, but when you've identified the pain points, then you'll know what tech to implement, what will help you become more efficient. So it's like, this cost benefit and efficiency. Like where can you gain efficiency? And that's sort of outside of the competency. Like where can I increase my competency? So maybe, look at it from both lenses. Like where can I increase my competency and my efficiency? And hopefully those should match if somebody's architected the tech in the way that it should have been done.
okay.
Technologists.
Technologists.
Yeah, so a lot of firms, and probably most of you in this room, have innovation committees, but oftentimes I have learned actually that these innovation committees don't seek outside opinions about innovation. So these innovation committees are headed up by all legal professionals, which is fantastic, but that's only half the equation. And so very much like the tech industry needs input from legal professionals and the legal industry and that expertise, vice versa. The legal industry would benefit from opinion from technologists as well.
So from collaboration, basically. Sure. Yeah, fantastic. Do we have time for questions? No, I'm sorry. Okay, we don't have time for questions. But like, I think that all three of these people are more than happy to answer questions after. I don't want to speak for them, but they have a lot to say and a wealth of knowledge to share. So if you do want to learn more, absolutely come and ask questions. I know they both, Amy and Aileen, and I know Colin, has some great resources as well that they can likely steer you toward if you're really looking to learn more and want to expand your knowledge. So yeah, thank you guys so much.